The long, bloody years of the wilderness are finally a memory. The dust of the road has been washed away, and the sounds of clashing swords have been replaced by the peaceful hum of a kingdom at rest. King David stands today in the center of his great hall, a masterpiece of architecture crafted from the finest red cedar of Lebanon. Take a moment to imagine the scent of this room. It is heavy, sweet, and resinous, the smell of extreme wealth and hard-won security. David reaches out, his calloused fingers tracing the deep, dark grain of a massive cedar pillar. He feels the coolness of the wood, a gift from King Hiram of Tyre, and he marvels at how far the boy from the sheepfolds of Bethlehem has come. But as he stands in this temple of luxury, a sharp, cold realization pierces through his satisfaction. He looks out through the high, narrow windows of the palace toward the lower city. There, sitting in the middle of a dusty courtyard, is the tabernacle, the same weather-beaten, sun-bleached tent of goat skins that has housed the Ark of God since the days of the desert. A wave of profound guilt washes over the king. He begins to pace the polished floors, his footsteps echoing against the cedar.
How can I, a mortal man, dwell in a house of such splendor?
He whispers to the empty air,
while the very throne of the living God sits behind curtains of cloth and leather.
It is a noble conflict, the heart of a servant who wants to give his master the very best. But David is about to discover that the God who created the cedar forests does not need a roof. He is looking for a lineage. David cannot keep this holy fire to himself. He summons Nathan the prophet to the royal balcony. Below them, Jerusalem is a hive of activity. You can hear the distant ring of stonemasons' hammers and the calls of merchants in the square. David points toward the humble tent of the ark and then back toward the towering walls of his palace.
He pours out his heart to Nathan, his words tumbling over one another in his excitement. "I will build a temple,"
David declares.
"I will build a house of stone that will stand for 1,000 years. I will overlay the walls with gold and pave the floors with marble so that the glory of Israel finally has a home worthy of its name."
Nathan, looking at the king's radiant face and knowing the depth of David's devotion, smiles and nods in immediate agreement. To Nathan, it makes perfect sense. A great king should build a great temple for a great God.
"Go,"
Nathan tells him, his voice full of warmth and encouragement.
"Do all that is in your heart, for the Lord is truly with you."
It is a moment of pure human alignment. Two men, both loving God, agree on a plan that seems flawless. They shake hands on a monumental future, unaware that as the sun dips below the horizon and the first stars appear over the Judean hills, the heavens are preparing a correction that will echo through every century of human history. The city of Jerusalem falls into a deep, cool slumber. But for Nathan, the prophet, the night is anything but restful. In the silence of his quarters, the very atmosphere begins to vibrate with a supernatural presence. A light that is not from any lamp begins to fill the room, and the word of the Lord arrives like a rushing wind, shaking Nathan's soul awake. The message is a staggering display of divine irony. "Go and tell my servant David," the Lord says, and you can almost hear the cosmic smile in the words, "Did I ever once ask you for a house of cedar?" God pulls Nathan back through the corridors of time, reminding him of the journey from Egypt. He speaks of the tent and the tabernacle, reminding the prophet that he has always been a God who moves with his people, never one to be contained by four walls. He reminds David, through Nathan's vision, that it was he who took a scruffy shepherd boy from the hills of Bethlehem and transformed him into the Lion of Judah. Then, the pivot that changes everything. God tells David that he will not be the one to lay the stones of the temple. David's hands are the hands of a warrior. They are stained with the grit of 100 battles. The physical temple is reserved for a son of peace. But then the Almighty makes a declaration that shatters David's modest architectural dreams. The Lord declares to you that the Lord himself will establish a house for you. It is the ultimate reversal. David wanted to build a house for God. God is going to build a house out of David. This is the moment the Davidic covenant is forged in the fires of a midnight revelation. It is an unbreakable, eternal promise that becomes the anchor for all human hope. God promises that even when David's descendants fail, and the history books tell us they will fail spectacularly, his steadfast love will never be torn away as it was from Saul. He promises that a son of David will eventually build the physical temple. But the true house of David is a spiritual dynasty. Imagine a golden thread of light starting at David's throne and stretching forward, past the kings of Judah, past the exile in Babylon, and into a distant, glowing horizon. This promise points toward a son of David who will not just rule over a small strip of land in the Middle East, but who will govern the entire cosmos from a throne of eternal light. David offered God a gift of stone and timber, but God gave David a gift of eternity. Every prophecy of a coming Messiah, every song of hope sang in the darkness of oppression, finds its heartbeat right here. In rejecting David's building project, God revealed a blueprint for the salvation of the world. The shepherd king wanted to build a monument. God decided to build a legacy that would outlast the very stars Nathan was gazing at. When the morning sun breaks over the Mount of Olives, Nathan delivers the divine no to the king. But David does not react with the wounded pride of a monarch. Instead, he is completely overwhelmed by the staggering yes that accompanied it. He leaves his palace of cedar, walks across the courtyard, and enters the quiet, dim interior of the tabernacle tent. He sits on the ground before the Ark of the Covenant, the golden chest he risked everything to bring home. He sits in the presence of the holy, his crown removed, his head bowed low in the dust.
Who am I, Sovereign Lord?
He whispers into the silence of the tent.
And what is my family that you have brought me this far?
He realizes in this moment of deep prayer that he is just a tiny blessed thread in a massive ancient tapestry of grace. He accepts with a joyful heart that he will never see the marble floors or the gold-plated walls of the temple. He understands now that his real crown isn't the one he wears, but the promise that his bloodline will carry the light of the world. As the morning light filters through the heavy goatskin curtains, David finds a peace that his palace could never provide. He is a king who has finally learned that the greatest honor is not in what we build for God, but in what God builds through us. The house of David is established not by the hands of masons, but by the breath of the Almighty,